Go to death before death comes to you. Death isn't dead. A lot of other philosophers explain this in a different way, and I'm going to try to condense this down, as I always do in these videos for you. Dan Winter says, you have to learn, and the only reason you're here is to learn to take your memory through death. And as we explore further and further what memory means, and who Darth Vader is, and what Doth is, and what death is, and to be dead is to de-add, and we look into Saturn and cubes and salts, and we get into the crystals, and we get into what a pencil is, and the papacy and the papyrus, and the father and the fire, and we take all of these things that I've been spilling out here for you. We're going to try to look at it again. This is another look for everyone. For some of you, this will be very advanced. For some of you that have been following along, this will be an aha moment for some things. And it's kind of a redub on a video that I did a long time ago on pencils and to be or not to be, and why pencils are called lead, even though there's no lead really in them, because lead means to lead you somewhere. And we're going to get farther into the alchemy, and we're going to get into a couple planets, which are actually wandering stars or moving bodies of energy. And let's look at this pencil again. As always, the pen is the pentagram. The pen is the device that you write something with. And inside that pen, or that pencil, is carbon. And that carbon comes in the form of graphite. There's 3 specific kinds of carbon, and that's coal, the stuff that you burn to make a train go, or that you burn to create fire. And then there is the next level, which is the graphite that you write with, but they're crystals. And then there's a diamond. So you're literally, when you're writing with crystals. And you write on the paper, which is the papacy. And this connection between what lead is and why it was used, and its connection to Saturn, because Saturn is lead. Saturn is, let me just jump in here and show you this idea here, so we can get into the alchemy of it. If we look at where the moving stars are, they call them planets, but we know better. We look at the days of the week and they're out of order. If you look at the way that the planets are said to be, but the 7 planets by the alchemists, the closest to the sun was called Mercury. And Mercury is transformative. It has the most, if it's closest to the sun, as they say, it's quicksilver. It's the quickest. It quickens something. It transforms and transmutes something. And Saturn, being the farthest away, is the farthest from the source. So it would be lead. It would be the heaviest. It would be cubed. This is why Saturn has to do with cedar and the cubes of salt. Why cedar? What do you think is around a pencil? The wood that they use around the pencil is cedar. And whether you're thinking of cedar as putting a seed into the planet, into the darkness, into the coal, into the salts, into the earth, Saturn has everything to do with the upside down, pointing to the ground pyramid. It has to do with the taking and putting the pentagram on its head. It pulls energy down into the darkness. It shows the earth. It's the farthest from the sun. But Mercury, being the closest to the sun, is transmutive. It transforms these things. And so you can look at even the connection to Mercury and Gemini, and what Gemini has to do with the middle of the summer and being dualistic. So there's a lot of interesting ideas that the alchemists gave you that have been misplaced by the people that gave you the calendar even. Because the calendar, depending on how you read it, might be out of order. Why would the moon isn't the closest to the sun? The moon has something to do with the sun. I mean, if we look at it a little differently even, and we understand that the sun and the moon are something different than what we've been told, and it's obviously Mars is not Mars is beyond the Earth. It's not before Mercury. So how does this work? So if we look at it directly, in the way that I've shown you in other ideas, if we look at the soul, meaning the SOL, meaning the sun, the place that all of the energy comes from, and then we look at the soil, the SOIL, and we consider the soil as Saturn, where the trees come from, the seeds, where the seeds go, Saturn, the cubes of the salt to be incubated on the planet. We start to get another understanding of what needs to be done, and it's why we can look at something like the cube or the base, which is the base metal and the physical world. And if we burn that, if we use a fire, which is these words in the middle of the page, we kind of get an idea of what it is. Because if you burn carbon and you put pressure on it, it becomes a diamond. This gets into crystal skulls and about what forms a diamond, and what the cube was, and what the cube is, and how it's again getting into all of this singularity, not duality, mind frame, that they're bound together, the male and the female element, the ether and the matter. And so as we further consider what a mystic is, if we look over on the right side of the page, they never have a pen, they never have a pencil. Maybe, if you knew better, maybe the mystic did have a pen and a pencil and wrote a story, and they're walking around in it from a different dimension, a different plane. Or maybe they just thought it, because the idea of a mystic is it's not quite air, it's not quite water, it's something in between. It can take shape and form and change. It can transmute itself. It's a mystery. It's mist. And so that mystic has even gone beyond the realm of needing to use what someone may call a sorcerer, or someone that uses the material world. And I thought that picture was really interesting, that now people are using the digital Ethernet to do things. And it's one way, and it's obviously a way to go about it. It's why these people start using symbols on paper and papacy, and they use a pen or a pencil that has the graphite. And to graph something, as a cartographer, as an architect might do, is to write down something. And so they graph something with their graphite, which is a crystal, and then they burn it. So they've put it up into the environment where the mystic lives, where the mist lives, where the higher source and angelic things are. And so this is the idea of transmuting what was once a material object and sacrificing it into the spirit, and to burn it, to literally take that thing and let the loop occur. Because as the water rises into the air and then falls down as rain, it becomes clean. In the same way, when you burn something, you create a higher form of gold. You take off all of the dross and all of the things within the gold that aren't pure. And the same thing happens in the opposite direction with water. It distills itself. And so that distillation process is the burning of the carbon on the paper, which was once a tree, which was the father, now burned again by the father, which is the fire, and puts it up into the mist, into the ether. And so then you have these two qualities of what a sorcerer, or what a magician or a magi might do. And then we get into the lower forms of magic I've talked about, which is the technological, which is the even the mental magic, using psychological tricks. But the mystic and the things from the mist are from the spiritual realm, from a higher order, where everything goes up to and is condensed and considered and moved around within the soul, and then is rained back down with, and that in that rain is part of what that mist is. That nobody quite can understand, or you can't bring it back. It's like I was speaking about the island that someone was to. If you've been to the island and no one else has, how would they believe you? Even if you could put the seeds in the ground and the fruit would come, but some would say, no, I don't believe that came from there. Anyways, as we move on with this idea of what the spiritualist does, what the the magicians that use the real magical arts versus the lower level magicians that use psychology, and then the even lower ones that use technology. It's the why you can see if you look at a magician these days, they always wear all the black with the white gloves, and they're showing you what they are, just like the priestcraft. They wear all the black with a little white and patch, and then you've got the doctors that wear the white, and this is the black and the white. They're still on the chessboard because they're not mystics. They're not using the highest source of mystery. They're not using the spirit. They're not using the soul. They're not using that type of high level magic. They're using the 2 levels down, as I did in the other video just yesterday. So I'd suggest going there if you haven't seen it, because again, it's these 3 levels. It's the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, and those connect to the technological, the technology, and then the mental, and then the spiritual, and the highest level being what rains down and what comes down and condenses from the ether into the matter, into the box, into the cube, into the incubation of what the Saturn is, the cedar is. And so when people walk to Saturn, they're walking to the physical object. But by going in the other direction, because nothing can really die, would Saturn follow you to the sun? Saturn would burn. The idea of what those things are that are already dead, they couldn't, if it was truly dead, it wouldn't go that way. It wouldn't follow you down a river. Death wouldn't follow you down a path of drinking distilled water. The water would grasp onto the dead things and remove it, and then all that could be left was life. So the path of water and living waters, the path of light, in these elements, death can't live. So go to the death and put the living things in your body. Oxygen, clean water, sunlight. These things will wash everything away that seem to be dead or seem to be lead and dead. And the whole idea of what Saturn Day is. And the cube in Mecca. Why is it a cube? What's being incubated? Are people trying to instill life into a dead object? Is that idol worship? As they're taking their energy within themselves, and just like a whirling dervish does for him or herself, they spin around with one hand in the air and one hand to the earth, and they imbue spirit and energy into themselves. But now you have thousands of people walking around a cube. And where is that energy going? To who? To what? To an idea? To a ghost? To an archon? To an archetype? Is that thing getting charged? And who's collecting that energy and that charge? So, understand these ideas of writing things down. And this gets into like suggesting to use the pen and the paper for your benefit. Or, as I'll say time and time again, to be in the mystic level, to bypass that completely. And that is the use of the paper and the pen is to increase your ability to focus. To get to the point, because when you die, if you choose to bypass through the gates of whatever it is, through the mirror, you don't get to take anything with you. You take your memories. You take your water and your light with you. You don't take a pencil. You don't take a pad of paper. But while you're here, you can choose to use those things to manifest things while you're on this plane. And so you get to architect, you get to be a cartographer, you get to use the graphite, you can use the things of the Saturnian world, of the dense physical matter of the mother, and you get to combine the two. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Chat soon.